John Curtis, one of a whole posse of promising younger players that Alec Ferguson is yet again developing.
I spent a lot of time in my younger days playing for Aston Villa and teams in the Midlands area. The scout that found me actually lives in Nuneaton, where I was born and bred. And Jeff Watson, who was the scout, noticed me pretty early, and on some holidays I used to come up to spend 2 or 3 weeks at a time here. We'd stay in Salford University, train at Littleton Road, and it was really the Blackburn game when we won the league for the first time, and I was at that game, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. This is where you're going to play football. So that sealed the deal for me more than anything else. I think it's always going to be immensely difficult for players to break through, but the club's got a record of producing players and blooding young players and wanting to keep those players in the club, because once you're a Manchester United player, once you've been in the system and come all the way through, I think you know the club inside out, and I don't think many of the players who have signed at a later date, when they're a little bit older, really understand that until they get here and spend a little bit of time here. But as a young player, you know it. You know the heritage, you know the history, you know the class, you know everything about the club. For me to be in the same training ground as those guys, it's an unbelievable education, and it's only really when you look back at those experiences as now a young coach that you realise you kind of see why they were successful. And it wasn't rocket science. It was hard work. Those guys worked extremely hard, day in, day out. Year in, year out. They were dedicated and committed, and ultimately they made it. They made it right. They are Manchester United legends now. That's an amazing achievement, because you said there's a lot of good players in round about my age group. So for me to win that award is a huge honour. It sits in my library back home, and it sits there in pride of place. It's fantastic. If you look at the list of players that are on there, for me to have my name on there, there's some really top players on there. So I'm just obviously delighted to have achieved that.
Roy Keane is also being replaced. So John Curtis, one of a whole posse of promising younger players that Alec Ferguson is yet again developing. Curtis, 20 years old, playing a number of defensive positions.
To be involved as a young player in that season, that phenomenon was amazing. It'll always be one of the highlights of my career, even though only 7 games. Some of the lads might have played 55 that season, but to play a part and to contribute even in the smallest way to that, I'm immensely proud of that. But it's only when you sit back now and actually remember all of the great games that we witnessed, mostly from the bench, but to be in the dressing room with the boys, again, fantastic experience, something that I'll never forget. The way they behaved, the way the management handled things was an amazing achievement. I think my most memorable game from that season was the 8-1 victory. That was such a fantastic game. So there was a lot of great games that season. I think Giggs's goal as well in the semi-final is always sticks out. And of course the final itself in Barcelona was, if you're going to win it, make it memorable, and that was certainly memorable. Manchester United it's so high profile, and it's so competitive. All of the players are driven, focused, determined, and you have to be that way to succeed here. And I think as soon as you step away from that, you were accustomed that when you walk through the front doors at the Cliff Training Ground or at Carrington now, you're arriving somewhere special. You're arriving for work. You have got to be 100% top drawer all the time. Best behaviour, everything you do, immaculate. And when you go to other clubs, it's not quite like that. There isn't the scrutiny that there is at Manchester United. There isn't the expectation and the pressure. There isn't the work ethic. There isn't the professionalism that there was here. So stepping away from that, it did feel like it was, a weight off your shoulders. And for me personally, I think that really helped, because it allowed me to relax a little bit more and play my football. And for those couple of years after I left the Manchester United, I think they were probably arguably my best years, because you still had the standards, the mentality, the professionalism, but just in a less ruthless environment. And I think that was good. Blackburn is a very friendly family club, and it was the transition into Blackburn was very easy. They were playing in the Championship at the time, and I don't think expectations were that high when we in my first season, because they hadn't really been that successful. So again, it was going from a pressurised environment into a less pressurised environment. But I really enjoyed it, working with Graham Souness and the guys there. It was a memorable season for me, because I played every single game. Didn't get injured or anything, which was rare for me going forward. Certainly, arguably the season before at Barnsley was as good as that. But the season at Blackburn that we had, my first season there, was very, very good. I really enjoyed it. As a professional, you want to play at the highest level, to play with Harry Redknapp at Portsmouth was a fantastic experience, and Dave Bassett to an extent, and Mickey Adams at Leicester as well. Dave Bassett was the manager at Barnsley when I was on loan there, a couple of years before that. So I think he was instrumental in bringing me to Leicester City. Both of those teams in the Premier League struggled, so it was very different. But again, playing in the Premier League is the holy grail for a player. Having done what I've done as a professional and my involvement with this club, it helps you no end in other things. So towards the end of my career, I got into coaching. I did my B licence and A licence, and coached here in England for a long time. But as you said, I went to play in Australia, coached there too, coached in Italy, now coaching in the US and doing my USSF A licence currently. It opens an awful lot of doors, and it gives you a perspective that very few people have got. And if I can give back my experiences and that knowledge that I gained, and very fortunate to gain, to young players wherever they be, that's very satisfying as a coach and as a person, to be able to give that back to the game. I think Manchester United has always had a history and a reputation for producing young players. The club has been founded and built on that over the years, and I think it's important to maintain that. And I think the systems that were in place, that were really introduced by the manager, Sir Alex, he was instrumental in building that youth system and paying a lot more attention to the youth development side of the club than many of his predecessors. I think the pathway and the systems that and the personnel more than anything that he introduced and developed was instrumental in maintaining that. There's been a shift obviously since Sir Alex retired, but I still think the knowledge and the experience gained from those years is still within the club, and it's still being still bearing fruit to this day. It's a little bit more challenging, particularly in the northwest now, with noisy neighbours spending an awful lot of money on their academy. But I think as a club we have to remain true to our roots, true to our philosophy, and try and bring that to bear rather than just throw money at it. I'm currently technical director of the New York Club Soccer League. I also help to run player development programs across the northeast of America, so it gives me access to a lot of players, a lot of very, very good players, good young players in the northeast of the country. So what we do, we create all-star teams, as the Americans call them, select squads that we bring over on tour. And we've just been to Carrington this morning, actually played against Lee Unsworth's U12 team, and it was pretty good actually. our boys compete. The American boys compete pretty well at the younger ages. As soon as they start getting a little bit older, I think the lack of opportunity in the States and the lack of quality coaching really inhibits them. But while they're young, they're pretty good, and I think people it's the perennial kind of statement, isn't it, that the US is eventually going to get good at football, soccer as they call it. I think they are on the right track. So I think the game is only going to grow in the US, and I think the Federation are doing a fantastic, the USSF are doing a fantastic job at trying to change the culture and trying to change the ingrained, old-fashioned pathways that there are in the US at the moment. And it will take an awful long time, but they are definitely on the right track. They've got some very, very good people involved. I love being a coach. I love passing on my experiences to young players and young people. I always want to work at the highest level I possibly can. What I'm doing at the moment, in terms of US standards, these are right at the very top of that. So I enjoy doing that. Potentially, I would move on to older players in the future. But for now, I'm very, very happy working with the young players and bringing them on.